This is a quick tour of the important concepts that relate to lead and lag measures. An executive summary would read like this. Lead or lag is all relative to where you are in the process stream. Secondly, the amount of lead time you need in your indicator is based on the action that you need to take. Third, the quality of the lead or lag indicator you need is dependent on the significance of the decision that you need that data for. And finally, it's easy to find lead indicators using a trick I'll show you called input, transformation, and output. So let's talk about lead and lag measures. Obviously, lead measures are things that allow you to influence the outcomes, and that's important. As a manager, you want to influence the outcomes of your process, and therefore you need lead measures to do that. And of course, if I want to predict the future, lead measures are the tool to use. And then finally, the cadence for review. Typically, lead measures are short-term. Lag measures. Lag measures like financial reporting show us exactly what has happened in the past. And they often cover a longer time horizon, and therefore the cadence for review is longer. By definition, lag indicators monitor the progress towards your organization's objectives. Sometimes they're difficult to monitor directly, and therefore we use indicators. And finally, the summary of financial measures such as market share and customer satisfaction can be lag indicators. Lead indicators. These are measures that drive the outcomes and provide information that's actionable by leadership. They relate to processes and activities of the business, and improvements in these measures should, over time, flow through improvements to the lag indicators. The problem with our traditional financial measures is that they're not actionable. They emphasize one perspective. They provide limited guidance towards future actions. And they may encourage actions which decrease both shareholder value and customer value. So things like looking at an ROI is not actionable. They only look at one attribute, which is the return on the investments. It's not going to guide us towards future actions. And finally, it may cause us to make decisions like reducing investment that will impede future shareholder value and customer value. So let's take a look at how these things work. If I take a look at, say, a sales process, maybe to begin with, our customer does some sort of research on us on the web. From there, they call our sales department. The sales department develops a proposal. Eventually, they negotiate with the customer, and eventually they close the sale. So that's the value stream. Now, depending where we look at it, anything, if we wanted to, for example, measure the likelihood of closing a sale, lead measures are going to be things like the research, the call that they put into sales, and the number of calls we put into sales are somewhat of a predictor of how many sales we're going to close. And, for example, developing a proposal is a better lead indicator for closing the sale. On the other hand, if I wanted to develop a proposal, if I were to take a look at, say, negotiate, that would be a lag measure. Negotiate and close sales are lagging behind the proposal. If we measure negotiate and close sale, it's too late for us to do anything about proposal development. So this lead-lag equilibrium can occur anywhere in the value stream. In this case, if I wanted to take a look at developing a proposal, lead measures would be things like researching the web or the calls to sales. And if I wanted to understand calls to sales, lagging measures would be developing the proposal, negotiating, and closing the sale. So it all depends on where you're looking in the value stream. Now, let's talk about the balanced scorecard for a second. The concept of the balanced scorecard is to try to put balance between the lead and lag measures. In a traditional balanced scorecard, we have the topmost perspective of financial, which describes what we need to do to achieve financial success. The next one is customer. What do we need to do to make our customers happy? And in theory, these are lead measures. If I make my customers happy, I'll managed to get more customers. So these are leading indicators for more customers. Well, how do I get more customers? Internally, the lead measure is if we can turn the planes around faster. This fast turnaround time is a lead measure for how many airplanes we might need, what our ticket price might be, and our ability to keep our flights on time. And at the bottom of this, it's about focusing on redesign. So this focus of redesign and improving our processes is a lead measure for actually improving the processes, which is a lead measure for fewer planes and so forth. So the hypothesis in a strategy map talks about the lead-lag relationship between the objectives. If we put the weighting on it, that tells us some perspective in terms of where our priorities are across time. So these top two perspectives tend to be lagging. In fact, they tend to be value consuming. These two perspectives tend to be leading and tend to be value building. So building better people and capabilities, building better processes, lagging, consuming those to make happy customers, or consuming those to drive financial success. Now let's go back to this process we were describing before. Let's say we're going to take the split here after negotiate but before close sales. Now, what do we need for a lead measure? Well, first off, we want to make sure that the quality of the measure is reasonable, is what I call the signal strength. Think of your cell phone. If you have only a couple of bars of signal strength, in other words, it's fairly weak, your message is staticky. You probably don't want to be negotiating a new mortgage or something because the person at the other end might not understand with clarity what you're talking about. So because that's a more important decision, I need a better signal strength. As we describe the signal strength of measures, we typically look for 5 attributes. Is that measure relevant? If it's relevant to the issue, it has a better signal strength. Is it actually measurable? Is it predictive of future relationships? Is it auditable? And finally, is it comparable? Can I compare it to other organizations? And we can score a measure against those 5 attributes to give you its signal strength. So in this example, let's pretend we end up with a weak signal strength for closing sales if we just use web research. If we used the call into the sales department, it's a slightly stronger signal strength. If we take a look at developing the proposal, good signal strength, and the same signal strength with negotiate. So now we can begin to make some decisions about what lead measures we might want based on quality. Now the second attribute is how much lead time do you need? Well, let's say we've got a business problem. Maybe we need to plan our plant's capacity. And to do that, we need 2 months of lead time to ramp up our capacity. So if we take a look at this process, we might discover that there's 1 month of lead time between when someone negotiates with us and we close the sale. There's 2 months of lead time between when we write the proposal and we close the sale. And 4 months between the call to sales and getting sales. So obviously, this gives us a longer lead time, but we only need 2 months. So this would be a target somewhere between 2 months. So if we bring these two concepts together, we bring back in the signal strength, we can begin to determine where we need to measure. Now, the same thing happens though if we're talking about risk. So for example, if I have a risk mitigation strategy that takes 2 months, I need to find a lead indicator that gives me 2 months lead time that risk might be occurring in the future. So the logic works whether it's processes like here or risks. In either case, once we understand the sweet spot in terms of the time, we need to go back to the quality of the measure. So if we bring that back in, we can see that the sweet spot is at 2 months, and we have as good signal strength at 2 months as we have at 1. So obviously we want to play around with using perhaps developed proposals is our leading indicator for closing sales. So the criteria to choose what measure we need is obviously the lead time we need, but also the quality of the data. See, if we're making a mission critical decision, then we need a higher quality lead measure to support that decision. So in some cases, if the decision is critical, your lead data might not be of sufficient signal strength, and then and only then do you need to invest in finding a better metric. So understand what is the quality of decision that you need to make, and that will determine the quality of the lead time metric you need. There are many examples in the balanced scorecard world, for example, of lead and lag measures. So I described before how the financial and customer perspectives tend to lag. But even within those perspectives, we can also have lead and lag metrics. So I'm not going to read this page for you. The idea is in every aspect of your business, there are lead and lag measures. It depends on your perspective on how much lead time you need. And we're familiar with these in all sorts of parts of our life too. If you think of the DuPont model, the one that says ROI is based on profit margin and asset turnover, and profit margin is profit divided by sales, and profit is gross margin minus expenses, and so forth. These become lead indicators for this, becomes lead indicators for this, and so on. So there are many lead lag models that we're aware of. So in the DuPont model, in each area, there's lead and lag measures. And in fact, an Ishikawa diagram or Fishbone diagram is another lead lag tool. So overall, the lag measure is responsiveness to our customers, and these things all contribute to it. Therefore, these are all leading indicators of responsiveness. For example, if we don't have a warranty, or the warranty process is not documented, or we have problems with field repair, or we have intermediate charges, these lead up to a lack of responsiveness. So again, many tools out there to help you uncover what they are, and you need to use whichever your organization is most comfortable with. There's also many even current books that focus on lead indicators. So, for example, in Sean Covey's book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, he outlines discipline 1 is focus on the really important goals, 2, act on lead measures because that's how I change performance, 3, create a cadence of accountability where you talk about that performance, these leading metrics on an ongoing basis, and then 5, develop this in a scorecard that's compelling. But again, even in the current management readings, lead indicators have a prominent spot. So there are also easy techniques on how to find lead indicators. The point is, in every activity that you look at, there's some sort of input, a transformation, and then an output. So for this webinar, for example, inputs are things like the web, my PowerPoint deck, the publishing software, my notes. The transformation is how I put these things together to create this webinar, and the outputs are going to be things like knowledge for you, the webinar, maybe I earn extra points in YouTube, maybe I earn revenue from the video. The idea is there's a lead lag relationship inside of any process. In fact, this process links up with other processes. So once you've gone through this training and you get some software, and maybe some extra staff, eventually you get the outcome of a better metric system. So there are many input, transformation, output cycles inside of all the core processes, and you just need to decide where you can get the data that has the signal strength that you require. So again, the summary is this. Lead and lag is all relative to the target area that you're talking about. So one person's lead indicator is someone else's lag indicator. The lead time that you need to look at for those lead indicators depends on the time it takes for you to take action. If it takes 4 months, you better have a 4-month lead indicator. The quality of the indicator is dependent on the significance of the decision that you need to make. The more important the decision, the higher quality of indicator you require. And then finally, it's easy to find lead indicators by using the input, transformation, output mechanism. I hope this has been useful to you as a way of understanding lead and lag measures.